Sarah Ferguson should testify after reportedly accepting £2 million from Epstein. The former Duchess of York Sarah Ferguson has once again found herself at the center of intense scrutiny following explosive new revelations about her finances. Reports published this week claim that she accepted a total of £2 million from the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein over several years. This figure far exceeds the £15,000 she publicly admitted receiving in 2011 when she described the payment as a loan for business purposes. The fresh allegations have prompted renewed calls for Sarah Ferguson to provide full testimony under oath before any relevant investigative body. Legal experts, commentators and victims' advocates now argue strongly that she must appear and answer detailed questions about the true nature of her financial relationship with Epstein and the purpose of those funds. The original £15,000 payment came to light in a Sunday newspaper sting, when an undercover reporter posing as a businessman recorded her accepting cash. At the time, Sarah Ferguson explained that the money was intended to help her repay a previous debt and that she intended to return it. She later issued a public apology expressing deep regret for her poor judgment and for allowing herself to be placed in that position. However, the newly reported £2 million figure suggests a much broader and longer-term financial connection between the former royal and Epstein. Sources familiar with the emerging documents indicate that payments were made in installments over a period spanning from the late 1990s onward. Some of the funds are said to have been channeled through offshore accounts, while others were transferred directly or via intermediaries linked to Epstein. The timing of these transactions overlaps with Sarah Ferguson's well-documented financial difficulties following her separation and eventual divorce from Prince Andrew. During the 1990s and early 2000s, she faced significant debts accumulated through lifestyle expenses, failed business ventures and legal costs. Epstein, who cultivated relationships with high-profile figures worldwide, is known to have provided financial assistance to several women in his circle. The question now centers on whether Sarah Ferguson's acceptance of these sums constituted a simple act of charity or something more complex and potentially compromising. Advocates for Epstein's victims insist that anyone who received substantial money from the disgraced financier should be required to explain the arrangement fully. They argue that large payments rarely came without expectations, whether social introductions, access to influential networks or other favors. In Sarah Ferguson's case, the reported £2 million would have represented a transformative amount capable of resolving her most pressing financial burdens. If proven accurate, the scale of support raises serious questions about why she has not previously disclosed the full extent of Epstein's generosity. Her 2011 admission of the £15,000 payment was framed as a one-off mistake. Yet the emerging picture suggests a pattern of ongoing financial reliance. Critics now accuse her of selective transparency, revealing only what was caught on camera while concealing far larger sums. Prince Andrew's own association with Epstein has already cost him dearly, including the loss of military titles, public duties and his Royal Lodge residence. Sarah Ferguson, who remained close to her ex-husband for many years, shared that Windsor property until recent changes forced her departure as well. The couple's daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, have maintained steadfast loyalty to both parents despite the surrounding controversy. Yet the renewed focus on Sarah Ferguson's finances threatens to pull the younger royals back into an uncomfortable media spotlight. Kensington Palace has so far declined to comment on the latest claims, stating only that private financial matters are not appropriate for public discussion. Buckingham Palace under King Charles has adopted a similar position, emphasizing that Andrew's personal associations are his to address alone. However, legal analysts suggest that if a formal UK investigation were opened, Sarah Ferguson could be summoned as a witness under oath. Testimony would likely explore the timing, amounts and conditions attached to any payments received from Epstein or his representatives. Such questioning could prove highly uncomfortable, requiring detailed disclosure of bank records, correspondence and personal recollections. Sarah Ferguson has built a post-royal career as an author, television personality, philanthropist and motivational speaker. Her historical novels, children's books and documentaries have allowed her to maintain financial independence in recent years. Yet the shadow of past debts and controversial associations continues to follow her, especially when linked to Epstein. Victims' rights organizations have seized on the new figures, demanding that anyone who benefited financially from Epstein face scrutiny. They argue that even seemingly innocent transactions can reveal patterns of influence, grooming or quid pro quo arrangements. In Sarah Ferguson's case, the reported £2 million would dwarf most documented payments made by Epstein to other women in his orbit. If accurate, it would place her among the largest individual recipients, raising urgent questions about what was expected in return. The former Duchess has always maintained that her contact with Epstein was limited and entirely innocent, facilitated through mutual acquaintances. She has expressed regret for ever accepting any money, and has repeatedly stated that she was unaware of his criminal activities. However, the emerging scale of financial support challenges that narrative and fuels demands for full transparency. Public opinion remains deeply divided on the matter, with some viewing the calls for testimony as unfair persecution. Others insist that anyone linked to Epstein through significant payments owes the victims and the public a complete and honest accounting. The Epstein files continue to be released in batches, with each new document potentially containing further references to Sarah Ferguson, until all relevant material is in the public domain. Speculation and pressure are unlikely to subside. King Charles has already demonstrated willingness to cooperate with any formal police inquiry should Thames Valley authorities proceed. A similar stance from Sarah Ferguson could help restore credibility, though many believe only sworn testimony will satisfy critics. The Princess Royal Princess Anne continues to enjoy widespread respect, and her recent standing ovation at a rugby match offered a positive contrast. Yet the persistent Epstein scandal threatens to overshadow even the most dedicated and scandal-free members of the family. For Sarah Ferguson, the coming months could prove decisive, as she weighs whether voluntary disclosure or legal compulsion lies ahead. The reported £2 million figure, if substantiated, would represent one of the largest known financial ties to Epstein. It would also intensify calls for her to testify under oath, providing answers that have so far remained private. The real person who should address these questions directly is Sarah Ferguson herself through clear public or legal testimony. Until she does so, the controversy will continue to swirl, pulling the wider royal family into an uncomfortable and prolonged spotlight. The public awaits clarity, transparency, and accountability in a saga that refuses to fade from view. The former Duchess of York stands at a crossroads, where silence may no longer be sustainable or sufficient. Should she testify, the full story could finally emerge, offering closure to victims and resolution to lingering doubts. Until that moment arrives, the calls for her testimony will only grow louder and